Hey, Dr. Newman, welcome. This is a micro lecture to orient my students in English 340 to figure out, why is Geoffrey Chaucer a big deal? Why is he considered the father of English literature and all that? Why is he important? Why are we still reading him 600 years later? And we're just going to go briefly into who he was and just a little bit to get you started on understanding the significance of his most celebrated work, the Canterbury Tales. So Geoffrey of Chaucer was born in 1340, 8 years before the Black Death, managed to live through it. His family ended up doing quite well from the Black Death because so many people died that concentration property ended up being concentrated, and his family continued to move up in society, having already moved up somewhat, as indicated by the fact that his last name, Chaucer, comes from a French word meaning shoemaker. So he was born among the higher gentry, the landowning class between commoners and the nobility. During his life, he worked as a soldier, a diplomat, a courtier, a government official. He was never a professional writer per se. That's not something that really exists as we understand it until the invention of copyright law in the late 17th, beginning of the 18th century. For most of his professional life, he lived in London. He lived apart from his wife, who belonged to the Queen's retinue. He belonged to the circles of both King Richard II and John of Gaunt, the Duke of Lancaster. But he was part of a circle, not of the higher courtiers, but of a kind of useful cadre of educated men who worked as something equivalent to an early civil service. And he in his life associated with a wide range of people, from royalty to common workers. He worked as a customs official in London, managing the taxes on the wool export, which was extremely important in England because a ton of money was made from wool. England was a major exporter of wool and textiles in the Middle Ages, which enriched the landowning classes greatly. So what makes Chaucer special? First of all, he brings English literature more fully into European literature. You read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight already, which is coming more purely from an English tradition, as you can see from the alliterative verse. Chaucer is much more in dialogue with Italian, French, possibly Spanish authors, also Latin authors as well. He makes frequent references to Ovid, for example. He also writes in a wide range of genres. He wrote a technical manual on the astrolabe for his son. He writes chivalric romances, fabliaux, which are like dirty, funny stories, philosophical dialogues, religious sermons. He writes a Breton lay, which we will read, The Wife of Bath's Tale, fairy tales, satire. He writes in a number of different voices, and he brings, especially in the Canterbury Tales, a new kind of quote-unquote realism to English literature, representing contemporary life and social difference. As you've seen in some of the medieval texts that we've seen already, it only represents the very top of society, the upper nobility and the royalty, and Chaucer represents a much wider range of experience and life and social positions. Also, he invents iambic pentameter, which, anytime you say that somebody's invented something, they're always building on something. The iambic pentameter was, in fact, an adaptation of an Italian 10-syllable line. But he's the one who brings this line, which, of course, we know from Shakespeare and Milton, Wordsworth, many other English poets. He's the one who sort of brings it and codifies it in English, both in stanzaic form and in rhyming couplets, which the Canterbury Tales are written in. Speak of the devil. This, by the way, is the Juan Not April with it's the manuscript, I think, of the Ellesmere. So the Canterbury Tales is written as a frame story about pilgrims going to the shrine of St. Thomas of Canterbury. Pilgrimage was a common devotional practice among medieval Christians. The three main pilgrimage sites would have been Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago de Compostela in Spain. But there were local shrines all over Europe, including that of the martyr St. Thomas of Canterbury, who was in a dispute with the king in the 12th century, and some of the king's knights got unruly and went and stabbed the knight, the bishop in the church, and so he became a martyr. And martyrs are pretty uncommon in the Middle Ages. The age of martyrs had been, the late Roman Empire, antiquity. not so many martyrs in a fully Christianized Europe. So there's a host who's receiving all these travelers at a tavern in Southwark, which is south of London across the river, and he proposes a story contest. They'll each of the pilgrims, who range from the highest member of the group is a knight and a monk, and then it goes all the way down to a cook, and there's a nun, and there's a miller, and there's this wife. There's all different kinds of people represented among this group of pilgrims. And so the host, who's the tavern owner, proposes a story contest. There were 2 on the way there, 2 on the way back. And we never actually get that many stories from Chaucer. It would have been like 120 or something like that. But the Canterbury Tales is unfinished. The General Prologue of the Canterbury Tales, one of the most famous parts, introduces the frame and the descriptions of the pilgrims. And the descriptions are these vivid literary portraits influenced by medieval traditions of estates satire, including both idealizations and grotesques. So some of the portraits show people at their best and some at their worst, but this comes from a medieval tradition of estates satire, which was where the writer would talk about each of the classes or orders of society in turn, and basically what was wrong with them. That's what makes it satire. Satire is a mode of attack or rebuke. But Chaucer's narrator tones down the satire and sort of takes people on their terms in a kind of generous way that sometimes is considered to be ironic. It's a very rich text. I hope you enjoy reading it. Let's talk more about the General Prologue. The General Prologue establishes the frame of the story. When is it? It's taking place in April. Juan nat abril with the Chaucer suit. Where? Southern England. The scope ranges from the celestial. He talks about the ram or Aries running through the house of the sun, all the way down to the tiny and physical experience of the natural world around us, the birds in the leaves, who during springtime are, of course, getting busy in the way that birds do, in every sense of the word. The references to the zodiac and the description of spring recalls the cyclical nature of experiential time, but pilgrimage, the fact that this is all a pilgrimage, recalls the unrepeatable nature both of life and of sacred time. We're always moving forward to that final destination, so to speak. And so the General Prologue, the beginning of it sets up this rich framing of what's about to happen. And yeah, that's basically it. This is just a micro lecture to get you started and get you oriented as you begin your journey through those parts of the Canterbury Tales that we'll be reading in this course. I look forward to discussing it with you in the discussion board and getting at me with any questions. One other thing I will say is don't stress, for the purpose of this course, don't stress understanding every last word. Chaucer's Middle English can be challenging, but read it out loud. It is English. Use the glosses in your text, and just, move forward. Don't get caught up on every last little thing. But read it out loud to yourself. I think that will be just like in second grade. Sound it out, and that will be good. So bye. Thanks for listening.